Well, one of the 20th century's most famous theater pieces will be starting a limited run in Osborne Village this week. The 28th Minute Theater Company will be presenting A Streetcar Named Desire at the Gas Station Arts Center. And whether you've seen the play before, or, of course, the film with Vivian Leigh and Marlon Brando, the work still holds plenty of power in 2025. George Toles is the director of A Streetcar Named Desire, and he joins us in the Classic 107 studios. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Nolan.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's maybe backtrack a little bit to your first experiences with A Streetcar Named Desire. Maybe even before that, how did you first encounter Tennessee Williams and his works?
I encountered Williams' early plays, Glass Menagerie and Streetcar Named Desire, around the age of 14, when theater was still, a vague possibility for the future, since our small town didn't have much first-rate theater, to put it mildly. So I read those two plays, and though I had no early experience of seeing any of the scenes acted, I was instantly transfixed and overwhelmed. Everything about Williams' way of doing things just spoke to my imagination. I loved the way his settings, for example, were this amazing blend of imagination and reality, with gauze and see-through walls and expressionist lighting, but his language was just so vivid, strong, expressive, memorable. It was like poetry, but without losing touch for an instant with spoken speech. And his characters were far removed from my sense of the world at that time, but they were so powerfully delineated, and there was such intensity at every stage of the play's development. I thought to myself, my God, I mean, to be able to do something like this on a stage, I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah. As you've kind of lived with these works over the years, how has your relationship to Tennessee Williams changed?
Well, certainly the love has not diminished. I mean, at the time, it was nothing more than a name over these plays. And, of course, the name Tennessee is irresistible. I went on to read virtually all the plays that he had written, and as well as his stories and eventually his memoirs. I've taught Williams, especially Streetcar, in both my acting classes as well as my film and literature classes. I've taught the film. I've written an essay on Streetcar Named Desire specifically. I've done earlier versions of the play on stage, the last in 1982. But in each case, for all of the good things that I feel came through, the plays seemed inexhaustible to me, and it's the play still that whenever I have theater dreams, that invariably is the setting for my theater fantasies. So when it occurred to me, I was thinking of doing a Williams play. There was no oddly master playwright year for Tennessee Williams. He's rarely done in Winnipeg. There was an MTC production of Streetcar back in the early 90s, but I don't think any of them no, it's not true. Glass Menagerie has been done since, but really so much of Williams isn't familiar to people here as a live experience. And it occurred to me that I had the cast. I had a Blanche Stanley. I had the people who I felt were equal to the extraordinary challenges of the work. And so this year, here I am. As I said earlier, the play feels and is inexhaustible.
For all of the scholarship that you've done on Tennessee Williams over years and the extensive study and relationship that you have with the oeuvre and with Streetcar Named Desire specifically, what is it like to get into a room that first day of rehearsal with a new cast that maybe obviously you know quite well?
Yeah.
What's it like to bring a new cast into this world that you know so intimately?
Right. Well, I think the first obligation that I felt was not to make them think that I was sitting as a director on all of the answers. There's no creative room for anyone else because I understand the play root and branch, and that it would be a deadly thing for the actors to contend with. So I felt that the most important thing that I could get across at the start was to say, I'm doing this not to impose on you what I know, but to discover from you possibilities that haven't occurred to me, that take me to a different place. I mean, there are certain things that are givens, of course, but there are many, many things in this play that, the fact that there have been innumerable productions worldwide of the play suggests that it is always metamorphosing. So I felt that I did not want R. Stanley to be under my shadow or the bigger shadow of Marlon Brando, and I didn't want... So having taken care of that and said I want to learn rather than to teach, I then went on to talk about some of the unusual, to me, more unusual discoveries that I'd made somewhat recently about the characters that I felt would facilitate a fresh approach. To give one tiny example, Stanley famously criticizes Blanche relentlessly for being a fantasist and a liar. He's all about facts, practicality, nuts and bolts. Everything is real. But his job, he's a traveling salesman. That means every sale he makes is based on lies, deceit, exaggeration. Yeah. So there's a kind of unacknowledged kinship for all of his sense of the stark division and gap between them. Things of that sort.
You're more of an explorer in this process and less an evangelist.
That's right. No, it's the same with teaching. I don't know if my students always believe me, but the fun of teaching a work for the 20th time is to have it blown open. And to become a different kind of entity into revealed dimensions that have previously been hidden, and the students are my means of getting there.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that Winnipeg audiences have maybe had less opportunity to engage with Tennessee Williams' work live than perhaps other centers across the world. For those audiences who have never encountered Tennessee Williams or A Streetcar Named Desire before, either live or even at all, what can they expect from this production that maybe they would not see in other places?
About the play itself, or about
maybe about the play itself, but what are some of the things that make it resonate for an audience that will, for first time goers, that they're going to go, wow, that's what all the fuss was about?
Well, I think one thing that stands out, it's true in 1947, but I still think it's true now. Starting with the play's title. In 1947, of course, there are countless plays about romance, love, relationship, adultery, etc. But I think what Williams did for the first time was not argue in some philosophical way, but in a dramatic way that there's something profoundly irrational about desire. I mean, it is not something that makes sense or is easily squared away with other parts of ourselves, and that it has this almost insupportable, and for many people at many times, will of its own, leading one into areas of experience which one simply does not understand. And so that primordial force of sexuality, and of course in 1947, I think Marlon Brando Stanley was maybe the first male love object, proudly so,
Sure.
in a theater setting. There was also the very famous cry in the night where Stanley,
Yeah.
I mean, even if people don't know it,
It's
but
that's the
when
iconic.
Stanley weeping out in the streets, not giving a damn who's listening to him, screaming for Stella, his wife, to come down the stairs to be with him because the thought of being without her is unbearable to him. I mean, it's a great love scene, but there's in every scene there's just so much. Not just libidinal vitality, but imaginative vitality, situational pressure. The play is loaded with physical contact. I mean, the word violence is usually very close to Williams' name. I mean, I think for the whole first decade of his popularity, people who interviewed him were constantly saying, why the sense, Tennessee, that violence is so basic? I mean, to human beings. And Williams was always, he said, well, violence is not the center of my play, but when you ask, why it's basic, he said, just look around you. And I mean, we don't have to look very far to see it. But but I also think that, and he said this about his play in 47, I really don't think there are that many plays which follow Williams' beautiful artistic lead. He said, I'm not writing to paint a moral, to nail down a theme, to tell you what to think about this character and that character. He said, my sympathies run wide. I am not here to dispel contradictions.
Sure.
And I think it's as true now as it was in 47. I think you have, the play's extremely accessible. I think people have many feelings about Stanley, Blanche, Stella, and Mitch, which they carry out of the theater with them, and that they dwell on them as problems as immediate, perhaps, as their own relationship problems. And you just don't have, okay, well, this is what Blanche is, and I've got a nice frame around her. This is what Stanley is. This is exactly what I think. Williams eludes that, and I think that's one of the things that enables directors to constantly find new forms of cultural relevance. In so many ways it is set in the immediate post-war America environment when America was embarked on the beginning of the longest rocket ride that any economy. Anyway, so it's there, specific in all sorts of ways, but simultaneously, in even more ways, timeless, constantly reforming itself to meet a culture's challenges wherever they happen to be.
What sorts of cultural relevance or what sort of cultural connection do you see an audience here in Winnipeg, who we've mentioned may not have the same exposure to this type of work, having? What sorts of things do you think they're going to take away from this production?
There is the Stanley problem. In that I think everything in our sophisticated sexual frame of reference now. I mean, I hate to give plot details away for those who haven't seen it, but I mean, Stanley is not just a hedonist, but an unapologetic alpha male. And there are so many males now apparently voting for a certain U.S. president who feel that their own permission, capacity to assert themselves, to work in what they regard as traditional or conventional male ways. I can't do that. I can't be that. What is it to be a male? And so unleashing Stanley as this potent but by no means entirely benign or predictable force, I think enables us to confront afresh, what is a male? What can it be? What do we want him to be? What do we secretly approve of, perhaps? So publicly would say, no, not that, not that. Anyway, and with Blanche, all of the old things that would lead people who are inclined to judge to say, she's a slut, she's a liar, she has no resources, she's a Williams says, he said there are a multitude of things about Blanche, call them her weaknesses, that are true. But Williams has this astonishingly prescient and ability to say, so what? I mean, no, I mean, and he said it's,
they are these things.
But I mean, really, that there are things at work that go so far beyond the social and moral judgments that we're so inclined or ready to place on a female who is our actress player says, seems always to be the smartest person in the room, in spite of her destitute situation and the fact that she's living with her sister and her husband. I mean, there are loads of things that an audience might choose to have some issue with, but there's such a towering emotional sensitivity and a poetic awareness of beauty as an alternative possibility for life in Blanche. I mean, it's like she is the standard bearer for aesthetic values in a world which has almost no use for them. And so, in effect, she has to hold on to these things without an audience that is able to say, yes, I know what you mean. I know why that matters. And so this is one of the things that constitutes her last stand within the play. And I don't think either of these characters, as I've described them, I mean, I think you can see immediately why audiences say, well, these things are by no means settled and familiar. Yeah.
But no means settled, by no means necessarily comfortable.
No.
But arresting, nonetheless, for actors and for audience members alike. If that isn't enough to get you on board with the Streetcar Named Desire, I don't know what will. The performance runs from June 11th to 15th at the Gas Station Arts Center. Showtimes and tickets will be linked on our website, classic107.com, and the Classic 107 app. Director George Toles, this was such an illuminating conversation. Thank you so much for coming in, and all the best for the run.
It's a pleasure to talk with you. Take care.